رسول الله يا حبيب الله يا رسول الله يا حبيب الله.
Muhammad, peace be upon him, life. The life of Muhammad, peace be upon him, orphaned at the age of 6. Muhammad, peace be upon him, was saved from a life of slavery by his uncle, who gave him a job in his successful caravan company. Muhammad, peace be upon him, was married to a successful businesswoman and saw firsthand how the leading families of the Quraysh lived. They were arrogant, ruthless, generous, and selfish, believing only in wealth and taking no responsibility for people outside their immediate elite circle, threat to the existence of his tribe. He was sure that social reform had to be based on a new spiritual foundation, although before the revelations, he had no idea that it would be his destiny to implement these changes. Less than 100 years after Muhammad, peace be upon him's death in 632, many scholars reconstructed their narrative from oral traditions and early documents, and through their efforts we know more about Muhammad, peace be upon him, than any other prophet. Still, we must remember that the stories of Muhammad, peace be upon him's life, were written to fit contemporary norms and include miraculous and legendary tales that may be misinterpreted today, as we have seen with the stories surrounding the wise men in the Old Testament and the Gospels. Such accounts are not to be taken literally. No God but Allah, the origins, evolution, and future of Islam. They function as a prophetic tubes. A conventional literacy theme found in most mythologies, like the childhood narratives in the Gospels. These stories are not intended to recount historical events, but to explain the mystery of prophetic experience. They answer the questions: what does it mean to be a prophet? According to tradition, Muhammad, peace be upon him, was born in Mecca in 570, the year of the elephant, when Mecca was miraculously saved. Tradition holds that Abraha, the Abbasian Persian ruler of Yemen, attacked Mecca with a herd of elephants imported from Africa. Abraha's goal was to destroy the Kaaba and make the Persian church in Sana'a the new religious center of the Arab world. The frightened Quraysh had never seen an elephant, let alone an entire herd, so they ran into the mountains to escape, leaving the Kaaba without defense. But just as it was about to be attacked, the sky darkened as a flock of birds, each carrying a stone in its beak, rained down on the invading army, which was forced to retreat. Many stories surround his childhood and birth. In a story similar to the Christian story of Mary, is announced Muhammad's mother, a widow named Amna, one day heard a voice that said to her, "You carry the Lord of this people in your womb, and when he is born, say, I place him under the protection of the one from the evil of every envious person. Then call him Muhammad, peace be upon him." Muhammad, peace be upon him, was orphaned at the age of 6. When his mother died, Muhammad went to live with his grandfather Abdul Muttalib, who was responsible for supplying the pilgrims with water from the Zamzam well. Abdul Muttalib, who had suffered the loss of his favorite son, Muhammad, peace be upon him's father, took the young child under his wing. He taught his grandson the Arabic language in detail and also taught him how to present argument effectively. While living with his grandfather, Muhammad learned about slavery, a practice he detested. He took steps to immediately release his slave Barak, who had been with him since birth. She was overjoyed, but chose to stay by his side and was one of his closest flowers throughout her life. But when he was 8 years old, his grandfather also died. Fortunately, his uncle Abu Talib saved young Muhammad from a life of slavery or indentence that so many orphans experienced at that time. He employed him in a successful caravan business.
مثلها طوار يا سيدي يا سيدي.
As a young man, Muhammad befriended a like-minded youth named Atik, 3 years his junior, whom he later called Abu Bakr. Muhammad had a strong sense of social justice, and even as a youth, he opposed and earned the enmity of some powerful men in Maccan society. Muhammad, peace be upon him, formed a pact called Half al-Fadl with a group of friends and an order mentor to protect vulnerable vendors from obvious Maccan elders and ensure honest financial dealings. They pledged to stand up for the rights of all people who have been wronged. At 25, when Muhammad was still unmarried and dependent on his uncle, he met a very distant cousin, Khadija, a beautiful widow, probably 28 at that time. Khadija was unusual for a woman of her time. She was a respected member of Meccan society and a very successful businesswoman in her own right. Despite his difficult social circumstances, according to Ibn Hashim, Muhammad, peace be upon him, enjoyed a reputation for truthfulness, reliability, and noble character, and Khadija commissioned him to bring and sell a caravan of goods to Syria. When he returned home with more profits than she expected, she sent two confidants to check on him. Both confidants reported extremely positively to her about his character and his insight. She then proposed marriage to him, which he accepted and thus gained status and entry into Meccan society. Muhammad, peace be upon him, and Khadija had got married for 25 years until their deaths. They had 6 children. More information about that: when he was about 25, he married Khadija, a wealthy widow whose status elevated Muhammad's position in Meccan society. Muhammad and Khadija had 4 daughters and 2 sons. Both of them died in infancy, about 15 or 20 years after his marriage. He began to have visions and hear mysterious voices. He sought solitude in a cave on a Mount Hira on the outskirts of Mecca. One night during Ramadan, the traditional month of spiritual retreat, when Muhammad was about 40 years old, an angel appeared to him in the form of a man and ordered him. Since Muhammad, peace be upon him, was an orphan himself, he knew how easy it was to escape Mecca. He now had access to a life of prosperity. He saw firsthand that although the leading families of the Quraysh believed in one God, they had forgotten that everything depended on him. Now that they were rich, they held on to the worst aspects of the Marwa and had thrown away the best. They were arrogant, ruthless, and generous and selfish. They had become self-centered, no longer believed in anything other than wealth, and took no responsibility for people outside their immediate elite circle. The Hira cave in Mount Jabal al-Nur, where, according to Muslim belief, Muhammad, peace be upon him, received his first revelation of traditional values as a threat to the existence of his tribe. He was sure that social reform had to be based on a new spiritual foundation in order for it to have any real impact. Muhammad, peace be upon him, studied other religions in depth. He was aware that his own people, although they believed in Allah, had no holy book of their own. The people of the book had codified laws, both religious and social, that governed their behavior from morning to night. Many were suffering and destitute, and the entire tribe was in danger of extinction. Before the revelations, he had no idea that it would be his destiny to implement these spiritual changes. He came from a small clan, the Hashim, and scholars pointed out that, like other prophets before him, He wanted nothing to do with what happened to him and was extremely upset. So much so that Muhammad rejected without Khadija's intervention. His plan to end everything would have been put into action, and the story would have turned out very differently.
وبصار أمه لا بغى كيف البصار يا سيدي.
Who was Muhammad? Muhammad was the prophet and founder of Islam. Most of his early life was spent as a merchant. At age 40, he began to have revelations from Allah that became the basis for the Quran and the foundation of Islam. By 630, he had unified most of Arabia under a single religion. As of 2015, there are over 100.8 billion Muslims in the world who profess there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his prophet. The life of Muhammad. Muhammad was born around 570 AD in Mecca. His father died before he was born and he was raised first by his grandfather and then his uncle. He belonged to a poor but respectable family of the Quraysh tribe. The family was active in Meccan politics and trade. Many of the tribes living in the Arabian Peninsula at the time were nomadic, trading goods as they crisscrossed the desert. Most tribes were polytheistic, worshipping their own set of gods. The town of Mecca was an important trading and religious center, home to temples and worshipped sites where the devoted prayed to the idols of these gods. The most famous site was the Kaaba. It is believed to have been built by Abraham and his son Ismail. Gradually, the people of Mecca turned to polytheism and idolatry of all the gods worshipped. It's believed that Allah was considered the greatest and the only one without an idol. In his early teens, Muhammad worked in a camel caravan following in the footsteps of many people his age. Born of major wealth working for his uncle, he gained experience in a commercial trade, traveling to Syria and eventually from the Mediterranean Sea to the Indian Ocean. In time, Muhammad earned a reputation as honest and sincere, acquiring the nickname Al-Amin, meaning faithful or trustworthy. Between 624 and 628, the Muslims were involved in a series of battles for their survival. In the final major confrontation, the Battle of the Trench and Siege of Medina, Muhammad and his followers prevailed and a treaty was signed. The treaty was broken by the Meccan allies. A year later, Muhammad had plenty of forces and the balance of power had shifted away from the Meccan leaders to him. In 630, the Muslim army marched into Mecca, taking the city with minimum casualties. Muhammad gave amnesty to many of the Meccan leaders who had opposed him and pardoned many others. Most of the Meccan population converted to Islam. Muhammad and his followers then proceeded to destroy all of the statues of pagan gods in all around the Kaaba. The death of Muhammad. After the conflict with Mecca was finally settled, Muhammad took his first true Islamic pilgrimage to the city, and in March 632, he delivered his last sermon at Mount Arafat. Upon his return to Medina to his wife's home, he fell ill for several days. He died on June 8, 632, at the age of 62, and was buried at Al-Masjid al-Nabawi, one of the first mosques built by Muhammad in Medina.